All right, welcome back to the show. My name is Ryan Morrison, and today's guest is Dr. Eric Fretz. His journey from a 24-year Navy career to becoming a transformative educator at the University of Michigan is nothing short of inspiring. With dual PhDs in psychology and education, he's not only taught over 8,000 students, but has also been instrumental in shaping the university's entrepreneurial curriculum. Beyond academia, Dr. Fretz is deeply involved in veteran support communities, community service, and innovative teaching methodologies. Welcome to the show, Dr. Fretz.
Happy to be here. Great to see you again.
Awesome. Well, I just want to have a conversation with you today. I mean, there's so much to unpack about your journey, your life, and how you've shaped just so many students' lives. And I was a student in your class back in, 2017 or so?
That was a while ago.
Yeah. So where do you want to jump off today? I mean, there's a lot to talk about.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, gosh, the time at the university has been great. I'm still teaching full time, but the 223 class that you experienced was just recently kind of shut down unexpectedly. So that's kind of been shaping my mood and world. It was a great 12-year run. I mean, it was really an opportunity to do something very unusual. I think the minor was started in an unusual way. I was brought in to kind of fix an emergency. They needed the class quickly, and I wasn't given a lot of supervision, which they wouldn't know because they didn't know me well at the time, but that, anyone who has ever been in charge of me in the past is like, well, Fretz is going to do something, and so it ended up being a really unusual and innovative class. It was, I was given a blank slate, and I realized it didn't seem like anyone was really watching or was going to critique what I did, and I said, well, let's just go for it. Like, I have all this knowledge and all this experience of what a really good class could and would be. I know all the theories of what students would like best. And of course, at that point, I had been a student post-secondary for like 20 years because I had like two bachelors, 2 masters, the dual PhD. I mean, I'd been in school forever. So I was like, okay, let's create like a love letter to undergrad teaching, the class I would have always wanted to have. And that was my guiding spirit. And also the idea of a project-based learning, right? That was something that was big in my PhD. And I had been taught by the people who developed that idea were my mentors for my PhD. So it was deeply ingrained in me. I knew the power of that. And so I figured, let's see how this works with Michigan college students. And wow, like if you sort of read the resume of the teams that have come through and the things that have, we can talk about some of those, and we'll talk about, I think the students created a memorial website. First it was a website to advocate to not close the class, and then when it became clear that they were going to close the class no matter who complained, it was more like a memorial. But I mean, if you're a fan of Valiant Clothing, Valiant Management, who is basically responsible for all the NIL success at Michigan, Jared Wangler, he's my student. I've mentored him, and he's done just fantastic work since he was in the class. But Valiant Clothing Brand started with me and him across a table and him saying, Dr. Fretz, I know you hate it when students try to do clothing brands. And I do. I usually prohibit it because I'm just sick of it. It doesn't go anywhere. Like, make a couple T-shirts and screw around with your friends. It's not good entrepreneurship. But he had the potential as a football player to really do a brand, and he damn well did. And then now it's this huge thing. He's just fantastic. And then the banana bread team, the Go Nanas, was amazing too. So yeah.
I want to unpack the Valiant one real quick because I was a student in your class, and one of your guiding principles in the class is do epic shit.
That's the grading standard, yes.
Right, that is the grading standard.
It takes students a while to get used to that. That catches them off guard.
Right, and I think it's awesome, and that's what every entrepreneurial program at any university should aspire to be like, is do epic shit. Yeah. And it's funny, my project was actually a clothing brand, which is why I want to interject. Our original idea with our team was to basically create these patches, these like badges of honor that you could earn as a student that would be sewn onto your backpacks or your jean jackets or something like that. For whatever reason, we ended up not getting there. Either maybe it wasn't epic enough, or maybe, I don't know, the team fell apart. I know that was a fact. Our team did fall apart. So, but there's a lot of lessons in that, right? I think one is that you can start with an idea and it could be epic to some and maybe not to others. And so you kind of have to test it, right? You have to figure out, like, is there legs here? That's one. And then the other one is your idea could very well blow up in your face, right? But that doesn't mean it's not worth still trying.
Correct. I mean, to coach the students and give them examples every class of like, here's a team that absolutely failed in their project. It was a disaster. Here's why. So learn from that, but also understand that because they did this, this, and this, they still got an A, right? Because they learned. So there's, there was a team that I think the record was 4-4. They had 4 consecutive ideas. They had an idea, they pushed it, it blew up. They re-ideated, new idea. They pushed it a couple weeks. That got run over for some reason. They got another idea. By the end, their 4th idea, it was like 2.5 weeks before the end of the class. So their final presentation for what they did was essentially not on their 4th idea, but on their journey of all these failures and what they learned from it. And it was one of the best, final reports that we'd ever had in the class. So that's the value, right? Is that you learn, like, your team failed, but like chances are you're not going to repeat those mistakes. So you're going to be a better entrepreneur in the future if that's what you choose, or just a better teammate because you're like, oh, we tried this and it didn't work well at all. But I try and scaffold that process really well, right? Like, I'm really good at the team skills and leadership, and we push that a lot in the class. And then I do a lot of essentially, I meet with, it's a 300-person lecture, and I meet with every single student at least twice. That's not normal, but that's how we get the results that we get.
Right. So I want to unpack more of that too. Like, what do you look for in an idea? Because you are one of the...
That's a whole book, but yeah.
Right. It's worth talking about because you have single-handedly probably helped launch more successful companies out of the University of Michigan than any other faculty member, right?
That's an interesting point. You may be right because it's like, it's between 1,000 and 2,000 teams. And dozens of them actually became LLCs. I only know of 3 or 4 that are like big going concerns, but like there's some like Funkin' Seeds and some others that really gave it a go. Oats and Woes was like a oatmeal group, and there were just a bunch of them. You go back through and see they went on for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then succumbed to lack of interest or market forces. But yeah, a lot. And the magic was just it took me a little while to develop it. The idea was you got to come up with a bunch of ideas and sit across the table from me, and you got to throw ideas at me until I see one that I think looks doable for you. Because what has been reliably the case, like since the beginning, Michigan students are incredibly smart, and they come up with tons of great ideas, but they have no idea which idea is really good. And I can't come up with all the ideas, but I can sniff them over and be like, no, that one, the third one. The third one is your idea. You don't see it, but I see it. Trust me, go down that road and you will have great success. Just watch out for this one thing. And invariably that works. It's really that dyad of you ideate and do, open-ended, and then you do the divergent, and then you sit with me and we do convergent to really see what's possible. And just to weed out the nonsense. Like sometimes they'd be like, oh, we have this great idea. It's for this thing when you're hiking, and it's a piece of fabric, and it goes over your boot. So your boot and your pants, it's like a piece of fabric that goes around and keeps the water from getting in your boot. And I said, you mean a gaiter? And they're like, what? I go, a gaiter, G-A-I-T-E-R. And they Google it really quickly, and they're like, oh, yeah. Yeah, that's what we want to invent. I'm like, well, that was done 40 years ago. So, but it's funny because they just don't have, I'm 60 years old. I haven't seen everything, but I know a few things because I've seen a few things, right? So that magic of spending, that's what, 40 to 60 extra hours of work in the first 3 weeks of the class to meet and launch every team. It's so challenging, but I loved it. I loved every minute of it because the kids are so smart and they're so enthusiastic. And when you get that idea and something they really believe in, and you show them, I believe you can do this, they get so excited because no one has ever turned them loose on something they have personal ownership for and told them, your grading standard is epic shit. What does that mean? Well, I want you to see you do something amazing. Like, I know what you're capable of. Like, show me. And like, well, how will we know when we're done? Well, we're done when the class is over. Well, how will we know if we've done it? I'll tell you if you've done it. Like, I'm grading you. Like, I want to see you do the best thing you can possibly do. And it's so foreign to them. Some of them, it takes weeks. Some of them push the I believe button pretty quickly. But once they get going, it's just amazing because most of them put in a ton of work. There's always a few that think like, oh, this would be a good scam. And then, of course, they get caught up because I have that phase system, right? I have that system I've evolved where you have to document your progress. So if you're really screwing around, I'll figure it out by about the second month. And then we start having the harder conversations about, But,
right. Yeah. Well, just for fun, Ben, would you mind pulling up the Valiant website?
Oh, yeah.
I think just
That's awesome.
Valiant. If you Googled Valiant, Jared Wengler, might be able to pull it up. And while he pulls it up, the reason why I want to bring it up is because I think, something that you and I have had many conversations about over the past is kind of that role that the university plays in being able to launch companies, right? And so I want to unpack that just a little bit more, because I also have this relationship with the university where it's kind of a love-hate relationship. Like, I'm an alumni of the University of Michigan.
Yep.
I'm, a proud psych major, entrepreneur minor.
Yep.
I started a business, Maximize, as a student.
Yep.
Everyone told me, like, where is this going? Like, no one knew what to do with me. And yet here I am, graduated and 4 years into running this.
Yeah.
And it's evolved many times.
Yep.
But just for fun, here's Valiant. So we take a look. So they've kind of helped. They started basically in your class, and now they're shaping NIL. So talk about their success and also kind of your philosophy on the role that the university plays in launching companies.
Oh, yeah. So for Valiant, it was initially just, let's create this logo, this brand. We'll make some shirts. We'll see if this can be catchy and, get this to kind of take. And that worked. And then he was both basically lucky and clever and hardworking. And he sort of he started to market his stuff through MDen. And he was integrated into the MDen right around the time that we switched from either Nike to Adidas or Adidas to Nike. And so when that happened, there was let's say there's 200 SKUs, 200 products. And all of a sudden, the new contract only covered 115. So there were 85 SKUs that just weren't covered. They just weren't going to be in the store. And he knew this, and he saw it. He was in a position somehow to be part of that discussion. And he said, hey, let me do a little research, and here's these 25 that really seem like could be quite profitable. How about I do those for you? And MDen said, sure. So that was like the first, right? That was the first stage was coming out of my class and succeeding and getting revenue. Then the second stage booster hits, because now they're in MDen and they've really got now a lock on something. And then from there, it becomes, now NIL is coming out, right? And so that becomes, now he's doing these deals with the student athletes and getting into that space. And so the clothing brand gets really, really big. But then the NIL space, because of course he's a player, he's the son of a player, he's deeply ingrained in the athletic department culture, he's highly trusted, doing all these deals. And as it grew, he's just very smart, right? And he's very patient, he's very thoughtful, and he's just incredible character, right? And so everybody trusts him, as they should. And that's just a powerful combo, right? He's a good dude. And then he has really clear ideas, and it's really exciting to see what he's gotten up to. Yeah, so I loved it. A couple years after the class, I was at Ford Field, for a game, some bowl game, and I looked up on the screen, and it had Valiant logo as an ad, and I was like, hey, that's my student, right? And then my wife came home about a month later. She's like, I got you these cool shirts, and I pulled the tag out, and it was the Valiant tag, from my class, and I just thought, my class is so cool, right? It's this commercial shirt that my wife is buying and bringing me because she likes it, and it's made by the guy. Anyway, it was fun.
Yeah, it's pretty epic. It's an epic story. So let's talk about that philosophy and that role that the university plays too.
Oh, yeah.
And I think maybe you could talk about what does, I guess just that push and pull with the university, because it's kind of been an interesting dynamic over years.
I'm going to go ahead and be blunt, because again, as I was mentioning to you earlier, I'm an unusual faculty member. I'm sort of like a instructional Ronin, right? I say, I'm sure it annoys them to hear this, but I say this a lot. I never asked to work here, and I didn't. I graduated from here, and then in an emergency, they begged me to come in and teach a class on short notice. It was like a 200, 300-person lecture in ed psych, and I thought it was just a one-time favor. And then they just kept asking me to create and teach more classes, which I just started doing, and it was very successful, and the students just loved it, and I was having fun doing it. And I thought, well, okay, I retired from the military. I didn't know what my second career was going to be. I guess this is my second career. And that was going great, teaching all ed psych. And then the opportunity to create the core course for the minor came along, and that was a big leap, because, again, I was a lecturer one. You can't be any lower on the faculty ladder and still be called faculty than that. And the idea that I was developing a brand new course, Gateway, 200 level, the core of a new minor, that was weird. And I told the assistant dean, I said, this is weird. I said, are you going to protect me with this? He's like, oh, yeah. Of course, at the end of the term, he just splits. where did you go? And the provost, Thomas Zerbuchin, also a great guy, he was gone. Like at the end of that first term, and I was like, all these guys who brought me in, gassed me up, and taught me, told me all about how it was going to be, and they all split. And I was like, huh, all right. But it was fun teaching the class, and so I loved it. And then I ran that class essentially like a pirate ship, and it was fun. But I can see why, administrators might find it annoying. I guess I don't know. And so it was always in terms of how we ran the class, and in terms of how I coached the students, I basically warned them. I said, listen, if your idea involves getting permission or endorsement or, some sort of official approval from some university administrator, it's basically the equivalent of giving your idea cancer. Your idea will die. Your project will fail, and you will not succeed in this class. And that always bums them out. They always seem sort of shocked. But it's just being blunt. And it's not that the university is deliberately evil, but it is bureaucracy. And so, in my class, you have 90 days to do your thing. And so you have some cool idea about how you change something in the dining hall. Okay, so you go talk to a dining hall person. They say, it sounds great. And then, I'll have a meeting in a week. And then, after 2 weeks of meetings and emails, you finally talk to the guy who directs that one dining hall. And then he could talk to the guy who does all of it. But then he needs to go to, like, Office of General Counsel because there might be some legal concerns. And we'll get back to you over the summer. And boom, there you're dead. Because you're not going to get anywhere, right? Like basically touching the university bureaucracy in any way, depending on them for anything, is cancer for your innovation. And again, they never like to hear it. Some of them refuse to believe. All of them come to believe in the end. All of them who go against my advice come to me and say, wow, that was horrible. We should have listened to you because it isn't going to work now. And then we figure out something else that they could do. But the university, in terms of like innovation, a bureaucracy doesn't like it, right? And part of it is people can be just jerks, and there are bad actors in there, but also it's a very large billion-dollar corporation with 110 different levels, and all of the units are kind of little competing fiefdoms. You think the university is a monolithic thing that just obeys the president. Any president will tell you that is not the case. It's all a bunch of little warring kingdoms, and so there's just no way. So I've always told them, we're not here to break anything or do anything illegal, but listen, you should just beg for forgiveness rather than ask for permission. So my students have done all kinds of really interesting things that, I don't know, if you want to criticize me for it, you can. Like they put up some stickers sometimes. Like they had some stickers on the stairwells that said, go up this side, go down the other side. Or my favorite was Norman Doors. If you're a fan of Don Norman, he wrote a book called The Psychology of Everyday Things, and he talks about affordances and how the example would be like nobody knows few people know Don Norman in the book, but here everybody knows this. You come up to a door that looks for all the world like you need to push to open it. You push, and the damn thing doesn't open. And you're like, what the? And you pull, and it opens. So a door that looks push but requires pull, it's a Norman door. In design field, anybody would say, it's a Norman door. So they found the Norman doors. And then they made these really beautiful Michigan-themed things that said, push or pull. And they just put them right where you would see it. And in some cases, it's like 10 years ago, I still see them. And you think, how many tens of thousands of people have come up to those doors and had just an incremental moment of their day been slightly better because there's no frustration because they put the sticker up there. And that just makes me laugh. It just pleases me to no end, right? So there are places in North Campus where there are maps on the wall in buildings where there are no good maps, and it looks just like a university map, but in little tiny print it says, Dr. Fretz's class.
Aww.
And it's just hilarious. So there's just little things like that all over the campus that, from a fussy administrator standpoint, that's vandalism. Okay, well, you can fire me like I didn't ask to work here, but mostly it just passes under their radar. We don't do anything destructive, whatever, but we have fun with it.
Yeah, no, it's great. And we'll have to talk about more of the companies and startups and everything that have come out. I think one thing I did want to address is the website, the Save 223 class. free223.org. The students, a team of students came to me and they said, Dr. Fretz, here's what we want to do. We want to, because they knew the word was out, right? That the class was probably being canceled, and they were upset. They thought it was BS, and I think it was BS. And so they said, look, we're going to make a website, and we're going to get all the testimonials, and we're going to gather all this, and we're going to show it to the university, and they're going to change their mind. And I said, okay, maybe. And I kept them posted as I kept poking around in my political channels and asking questions and trying to discern if there was any window to really save the class. And it became apparent that
everybody was just sort of standing there stone-faced. You know, the analogy I used with the dean was, this was like my pet dog. Like, I'd raised this dog for 10 years and worked with this dog for you. And now this dog is in trouble. This dog is drowning. And lots of people at the university could throw me a life ring to keep this dog afloat. And nobody did. They just stood there and stared at me while I watched the dog go under. And now the class is just gone. And I have some feelings about it. It kind of bums me out. It was a deeply personal, caring exercise for me to teach that class. I had real passion for it. And it came through. And the students returned that energy, which was why it was so magical. And now it's gone. And that is the nature of things, right? I mean, we can quote Robert Frost poem, you know, nothing gold can stay, or whatever. We can be all wistful. And, you know, like I said, my health isn't great, so, you know, it was going to end at some point. But it's just a shame. You know, again, to quote a movie, there's that scene in The Matrix where that one woman's about to be unplugged by some nefarious character, and she's like, not like this, anything, but, you know, and that's how I kind of felt. I was like, don't make me go out like this, but... It's over. We had a great party on the Diag. You know, a lot of solid feelings from the students. So the website's great. It's you know, they make kind of like they turned it into a memorial basically. So they surveyed all the old students and got all these testimonials that were just fantastic. I mean, I read these testimonials, I start crying because it's like, you know, from like 10 years ago where they talk about how they use stuff from the class every day, and it makes my heart sing, right? And I gave them some information. I have to give them more content because they created all this stuff. And there's areas where we talk about the funniest projects and the craziest projects and the most technically interesting projects. And so it's still under development, but really fun. There's a lot of great content there, and it's a fun way to sort of learn what the class was about. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Really transformative for a lot of students, which was what I was going for. So to know that it mattered enough to them to make the site, and that they gathered all this information from all these hundreds and thousands of students, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was epic. And, you know, like, you literally came to my class a half or more decade ago with a broken leg. Yeah. You came to class as of recently last year with broken ribs. I crashed my bike, broke 5 ribs, got up, refused the EMS, got on the bike, rode the rest of the way because my students were presenting. And I was like, they worked their whole semester to present this to me. I am not, like, at the time I was pretty sure I'm pretty well medically trained, and I know what the symptoms are for broken ribs, and at least initially, I was not presenting with those symptoms. And I thought, well, okay, then if I go to the ER, I'm going to feel really bad because if I don't have anything broken, I'm going to feel terrible that I disappointed my students. I couldn't do it. So I rode the rest of the way in, parked the bike, got in there, did the lecture and did, you know, evaluated their projects, and they came up and presented. And I told them, I said, look, I'm going to have to stand. I'm in a decent amount of pain. And if it gets worse, I'm going to have to call my people to come get me. And that's what happened. We got through the end, and I was like, okay, we're done. I got to call my guy. He's going to come with a trailer because I rode my e-trike in. You know, that's my little exercise. And so he had to load up the e-trike for me. He took me to the ER, and the ER was like, what are you doing? Like, you have 5 broken ribs. And I was like, okay, well, here we go. And the through line. Like, do epic shit.
Yeah. We got. I mean, right? Like, so. I don't know. I don't think it wasn't super smart. I mean, at the time I was on. I'm on a lot of anticoagulants because of my heart issues, and so like if I had been bleeding internally, that could have been bad. I mean, I probably should have gone to the ER right away. But like, at the time, my thinking was, you know, my students have done all this work, and they're going to be sitting there, and I'm not going to be there, and I'm going to be goddamned if I'm going to let that happen. I mean, if it has to happen, it has to happen. But if I And honestly, if you think about my whole life, and the projects are all about calculated risk management, right? Like I freely admit, if I run down the list, I could pull up. I have records for every class. I could sit with a dean or a provost, and I could list all the projects and describe them. And I guarantee you, every single term, at some point, the provost would have his head in his hands, like, you can't be serious. you had students do that. Well, why not, right? So there's some real classics in there. Yeah. So, and it all went really well, right? Like, I mean, I get it. There's always the possibility of a broken egg, right? But if you want to make awesome omelets, right? You know, an egg is going to end up broken on the floor here and there. But how many awesome omelets can you make? And it turns out with Michigan students, you can make a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've taught 8,000 students. Yeah. What's one lesson that they've taught you about yourself?
Well, I mean, there's a bunch. I think I initially had this worry. I don't know, it seems dumb now as a guy who works in the creativity and entrepreneurship space. I thought, well, what if we like run out of ideas? It just sounds dumb saying it because if you really think about creativity deeply, you know, it's like, that's nonsense because look at all of human history. So they've always, it does get repetitive. You know, you saw in my handbook for the class, I have the banned project list because there's some stuff that just comes up every, I want a website to sell tickets. I want a website to sell textbooks. Nope. Seen it, failed 100 times, and somebody else is going to make it work. But the idea that we run out of ideas, and it never happened. Or even during COVID, it was just, Michigan students are so amazingly smart and creative, and I just feel incredibly blessed to teach them. That's one. I think the other thing is sort of the power of just like investing. I mean, I knew this as a leader through the military. I did a lot of leadership and coaching and other things, but the meaning that people take from just being believed in, right? The thing that's interesting about this class is that I get 300 people who don't know me, and I can get almost all of them interested with that first lecture, which is a crazy intense lecture. And then most of the rest will follow along. And by the end, 90% of the students are saying, this is the best class I've ever had. And it's because I put that time in and I spend that time with them. And so I've led a lot of people, but never so many in tiny bands for 90 days, and then they're gone. And so the pace, the intensity, that I can sustain that and that I can build those kind of bonds with so many students at the same time, that was an interesting muscle to flex and an interesting thing to develop. And I really enjoyed it. It felt really cool, right? The class was very unusual in what it did. And a lot of people, when I describe it, they kind of roll their eyes and they're like, no, that just isn't possible. You couldn't do that. I'm like, no, it did it every term. And the students always came through. So, yeah. It was fun.
So let's talk about the military and how you've translated your military experience into emotional intelligence and all of these different factors that kind of bled through in your class. But just talk about your military experience. You've had some pretty crazy stories, and you talk about a couple of them in your class. But I guess maybe if you could single out a story from your military experience that really shapes who you are today and how you see the world, but also leadership.
Yeah. That's easy, because it was 24 years, like 4 years here in ROTC, and then 20 years after commissioning. Half of it was active duty, half was in the reserves, and 3 deployments across 2 different wars, all to the Middle East, all to the Persian Gulf, and a whole variety of leadership roles and other things, working for different federal agencies and doing all kinds of stuff. And it really obviously develops your leadership skills. It develops your ability to work under pressure and recalibrates you about what is serious in the world, right? It's easier to be relaxed about things when you've had people trying to kill you, for example, right? And so the biggest thing was really being in Iraq. When I was in Iraq, it was a no-notice deployment. They notified me a couple days before Christmas. I was gone a couple weeks later. It was devastating to my family, very stressful for me. And then I was in Iraq, and I was under fire, and I was in an Army unit where I was a stranger, and the stock market was crashing, and my wife was angry at me for going, and my son wouldn't talk to me, and again, getting shot at all the time. And then my boss makes me do a legal investigation of my own unit to try and figure out who lost a piece of classified gear. He basically turned me into an internal affairs agent in the unit I just joined, and then told them all, don't talk to Commander Fretz because he's doing an investigation. So here I am, alone, under fire. My life's coming apart. No friends. No one will talk to me. I mean, it was dark. It was a dark place. And in that, so that's instructional because I now have a lot of empathy for people who are in dark places, and I can recognize and I can vibe with that. And then I was able to partly recover because a chaplain gave me a purpose. So I learned about purpose because he said, hey, weren't you an Eagle Scout? And I said, yeah. And he goes, I think there's a guy down in the Green Zone, which is a nearby base, who's trying to rebuild scouting program. Let's go down there and help him. And so we tried to go down there. First problem is, of course, to get from our base to that base, you have to go down a road called the Highway of Death. And, in retrospect, if this is your commute, you should probably rethink it. So we went down there, and of course we came under fire. And some other people got killed. We didn't. But it was depressing because it was too much effort, right? It was hours and hours, and it was dangerous. And so we were back at our base, and we're kind of, me and 4 or 5 people who went down there with us, and we're depressed, kind of oh, this isn't going to work. And the chaplain says, why don't we build our own one here? Now, you got to understand how crazy this is, right? So you're on a base, you've got no money, no approval, nobody has any free time, you work 7 days a week. How are you going to build a scout camp and build a scout troop. It's like insane, right? So I dismissed it. I was like, that's impossible. And all the 4 people sitting around the table, they just keep staring at me. And these are senior to mid-enlisted, right? And they're looking at me, and partly because I'm the officer, and they said, sir, if you'll lead, we'll follow. Like, let's do this. And I thought, holy shit, these guys want to give this a try. So I turned to the chaplain and I said, okay, let's go. And that was a really fateful decision because, honest to God, it took us like a month, lots of meetings with sheiks and colonels to get to this general, and then to talk to this general and get him to let us have permission to be on the back part of it. The Iraqi Special Forces general, very scary guy. And he said, there's a back portion of the base that's full of junk. You can have that. And we had our first meeting in like this big field full of tires and goats and all this bull crap. And kids came out. It was amazing. And the Iraqis loved it. And over the next 3 to 4 months, we got volunteers to come with road graders and boat it all flat. And then we had security guys come in and put HESCO barriers, which is like a temporary wall filled with dirt. So we had a security wall around the whole thing, and then we had gates. And then the Iraqis brought in some old gym equipment, and we brought in like Connex boxes, and we got people to donate stuff. And then we put up a tent, and then another tent, another tent, another tent. And we built a whole camp. And it was all done on the fly. Like, nothing was legal. It was a war zone, right? So, like, if they needed something, they're like, Commander Fretz, you need to sign this form. And I'm like, sure, because if the Army will accept my signature, I mean, what are they going to do? Send me to Iraq, right? So just signed anything they brought me. And we built this entire 5-acre camp. I mean, you could see it from space. Eventually, even one guy, I would challenge them. I would taunt them. I would be like, hey, I bet you guys, like, I think it would be cool to have this, like, housing. Like, we need some housing on site for the Iraqis so they can have a guard here all night. And somebody's like, well, there's this abandoned housing unit that we've written off. It hit with a mortar. We consider it unusable, but if we brought it here, you could patch it up with a couple of pieces of plywood. We've thrown it away, basically. And I said, what do you need? He goes, I need a crane and a truck to get it here. I was like, bring me the forms. So I requisitioned a crane and a truck. I don't know if that was legal or not, but it wasn't like we weren't stealing. We were just getting something that we had thrown away. We were picking up a piece of trash and moving it to a different spot. And the Iraqis were really appreciative, right? And then I wanted to get power because it was all the way in the back of the base, and this was like $100,000. There's no money for this. And I said, I bet you guys can't figure this out. And it was one of our lowest ranking dudes who spoke up, and he said, sir, I've been here 3 times. And the first time I was here, we dumped a truck down by Sather on this sharp corner, and we put a whole roll of copper wire in the dirt, and we wrote it off. We never extracted it. And I can see it still there under the weeds. We could go get that. That's worth a lot of money. We could give it to the Iraqi contractors, and they would then wire. And that's exactly what we did. Basically, it was just trash that we had just left on the side of the road because that's how we do war, right? And so then they brought the wire. They took that wire and they electrified the camp, and we restarted the wells, and they grew the grass. We had a soccer field and a basketball court, and it was just magic. And that was one of the coolest things I've ever done. And it was tremendously healing, not just for me, but for everyone involved. So you can still search Victory Base Council, and you can find some records of it online. So Victory Base Council, Iraq, and there's a couple of like videos from like the Army. The Army started doing PR on it and everything. It was really cute. And so it was just wonderful. And in the end, it was very positive. Oh, yeah, there you go. The Victory Base Council.
So this is the base that you helped set up?
So we were on Victory Base, and then the Iraqi base was called Area 4, and then the green zone was way downtown. And so, so we did, so that's the T-shirt that we made. Yeah, those are some of the things. And we had a separate Girl Guides program, so there was Boy Scouts and Girl Guides, and they had a team of women who ran that. It was a very big deal. Like in our second meeting, the Iraqis let the girls come out and join. And that was a very big cultural moment because if they trust you enough to let the girls come out, right, that was a big one. And so, super fun. So
there were some lessons in there, right? So you learned about empathy, you learned about purpose, but you also learned about how to rally a team. Yeah. Right.
That was the last year of my career. And it was all of my scouting experience and all of my leadership experience brought together in one magical moment where all of my skills applied, and I was operating at this extremely high level because all the volunteers it's almost like a cult, right? Because they have no time. Like I'm asking them for their 4 hours of free time, which is all they get in a week. There's no days off. And I'm asking people for resources and things and asking them to look the other way while something kind of wanders off, right? And they all do it because it's for scouts, right? And so we built this entire camp with no permission, no money, right? All volunteers. And it was breathtaking, the sort of the humanity of it, and the kids having so much fun. And we would take, like, the Aussies had a base, and the Aussies don't screw around. They actually were able to restart one of Saddam's pools, so they had a pool because, again, Aussies, and they let us come and teach swimming lessons to the Iraqi kids, which was amazing, right? It was, I think, one of the best experiences of my life at the end of the day, right? I mean, it wasn't cool being there and getting shot at and all of that, being away from the family and deprivation, but all things considered, right, it was pretty amazing. And yeah, it brought all of it to a head, and really sort of all of my skills of, like, building teams and managing it and communicating and setting norms. And I built a structure that was designed to continue after me, to have double level leadership, and all the processes were all set to be robust. And it lasted good 3-4 years after I departed. And that's with, and the turnover is ferocious, right? Turnover kills teams. And the turnover there was a year at most, some people less. And so you can just see that the fact that it continued for 2 or 3 years afterwards is pure magic. Yeah. It was definitely one of the funnest things I've ever done. Really, really taught me about the power of that, giving people a purpose, right? Particularly like me, a lot of people wondering, why am I here? Why am I suffering? Oh, no, here I am. I'm helping all of these Iraqi children see what America is really about, and the power of scouting and all that good stuff. It was super cool. Yeah.
That's an incredible story, and
Awesome.
super epic when you share in the class and everything.
Yeah.
So what does that mean in terms of entrepreneurship? And because I've got a lot of listeners who are founders or even investors. So what lessons can you take from that experience? And if you could give a message to some founders about, who are either earlier in their journey, or maybe they just need some leadership coaching, like what would be, if you had one last message that you could give to a founder to help them either make or break their business, what would that be?
Well, in a general sense, it would be, work on your own emotional intelligence and really pay attention to that. Do the 360 feedback, get a coach, get a therapist, make sure that your game is immaculate, because if you are bringing your best self to the table and nearly 100% of your energy is available to push out to those around you, they will feel it, right? In the semester that I got really sick with a heart failure in like 22 and 23.
Let's unpack that too.
Okay.
While we're here.
And so there was a noticeable drop in the quality of the class. The class still functioned, and the students were great, but the evaluations tracked downward. There was just more friction because I wasn't at my best, and the class depends on me investing all of that time. And when I wasn't doing that as effectively, it showed up immediately. So as a leader, it's kind of like, it can't be this way, but like every day needs to be your best day, ideally. And the more that you can do of that, the better, right? And so really being good about your emotional intelligence, about having control of yourself. So when I teach emotional intelligence, it's a 4-quadrant thing. And the first is sort of, self-awareness, and then self-control. And then we move over to awareness of others. And then relationship management is like the top, right? And those first 2 quadrants of basically self, right? Knowing and having good control. If you really lock those down, you're always a positive vector, right? You have lots of time and energy to watch, to learn, to absorb, to notice others, and then to give them what they need. And that turns out to be super powerful. It makes people super loyal, and it makes them give, right, in a way that it's almost scary, right? So that the idea that some of these folks that were from in Iraq, right, we're sacrificing like all of their free time. Like this was the only free time they got for themselves all week in this, and they were lining up to give me this time and to help me do stuff. That's cool, right? That feels so powerful. And any number, like there's probably 8 of those people who are still in touch with me today. We get together. We went to a football game together, right? It's like, and honestly, there's a picture I show of these 2 enlisted men. This won't make a lot of sense outside the military, but there's a picture where I'm sitting in a cart a wagon that Saddam used to sit in and be pulled in horses for his inauguration after his quote-unquote elections. Well, they had that. They found it in some storage thing, so they put it in like this little park, the part of the scout camp. And there's a picture with my 2 most trusted senior enlisted guys, and they got down on their hands and knees like they were animals pulling me in this cart while I sat in it. And I just understand in the military, that's really not okay, right? Like the divide between officer and enlisted, and officers trying to stand above enlisted and look down on them, and enlisted being treated as inferior. That's a really common theme, and it's very sensitive. And this picture with these two men, like pretending they're animals pulling me in the cart, I had a 24-year career. That's one of the most purest expressions of brotherly love amongst, teammates that I ever experienced in the military, because that photo is insane. And if either one of those guys showed up at my house tonight and said, "Hey, Dr. Fretz, I need you to sign this, take $500,000 of equity out of your house at risk for this bond or whatever, because I need this to help my daughter or help my wife, or, I need this. I would just give me the pen. I would sign it without question, right? Because that's how much I owe those guys. And that kind of leadership and that kind of teamwork and that kind of intensity, that's super cool. It's hard to get, but if you can do that as a founder of that kind of energy. So long story short, EQ is really important. Knowing yourself and being control yourself is the start of that. And then it's spending a lot of time learning about others. That would be my big thing, because, not being able to attract and retain the best people, I think kills more ventures than anything else. I don't have stats to back that up, so I guess I said that's my intuition.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's go back in the 4 quadrants, because I don't want to leave that point hanging, because I think it's really important. So if you could just give us a rundown of the 4 quadrants, what they are.
Oh yeah, if you imagine this quad chart, there's a lot of people who, this is my adaptation of Daniel Goleman's sort of version of it. So he actually so I trained with him personally, and I have all of his certifications. I'm a big fan. So imagine a classic social science quad chart: upper left, upper right, lower right, and the left hand sort of vertical is self, and the right hand is others. And the first is awareness, and the second is sort of empowerment and regulation. So
do we have it here?
That's not bad. Yeah. Okay. So
it's not quite your quadrant,
but you see that. Yes. So this is pretty common. So I do a much more detailed version of this, but that's the same idea. And so you start in the upper left with this sort of self-awareness, and then you move over. So and this one's flipped. So this one is 90 degrees off of what I do. So the top two, so they move to the right. So I would say you do upper left and then upper right. You get those down, right? Really the personal stuff first, and then you can move over to social competence, which is what I would call quadrant 3, and then the best one is relationship management. I call that quadrant 4. So all the students who've been taught this by me, they have a little shorthand, and they say, "Oh, Dr. Fretz, I want to share with you this great quadrant 4 moment that I had," which is where they were just particularly high functioning with their EQ. So that's a good way to look at it, and there's a lot of things
cool.
you can say.
I think we're good, Ben. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we'll try to find your graphic somewhere, and maybe we could post it around
for sure. I'll send you a copy of my. It's just sort of customized, and it has because my students always ask me well, what do I do in quadrant 1, and how can I tell, and how do I develop? And so I've added extra juice to my version, but it's not unique. I've extended what others have built.
Yeah. I just posted recently about Dan Martell's quadrants. Have you heard of his buy back your time framework?
Interesting, kind of like an Eisenhower thing, or
it's kind of like an Eisenhower matrix. Exactly, it's like your zone of genius is in the top right corner, and then you have the next one is things you need to develop the skills, and then the next quadrant down is right beneath that is going to be the things that you need to delegate, and then you have the things you need to delete. Right, and so his whole thing.
And it's hard to get good at that, but
it's super hard. Cool. Well, I want to be respectful of your time here, but I do want to leave you.
I'm loving this. We want to go over it's fine with me. Whatever you want.
Well, I do want to give you an opportunity to talk about your legacy, because the class has now has a memorial, right? Mm-hmm. And you're moving on to maybe a new chapter. So I guess what's next for you?
Well, what's interesting is this is very common when people hear that sort of this marquee class that I've sort of created and love so much is being shut down, and they say, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, it's really very odd, right? The university made this decision to sort of kill off this class. I think just because it's very unusual and because there isn't good structural support for the minor. So I think there's some of it may be some personal stuff with me. I'm not sure." Again, I'm a handful, right? And so I can see where administrators might be like, less of Fretz would be great. And the class itself is fairly, it's like a pirate ship, and they would rather not have a pirate ship sailing around. So, okay. But I'm still employed full time. I'm very well regarded. They just promoted me to teaching professor, which is the highest thing you can get, right? So for someone who does what I do. I don't do research, right? So being designated as a teaching professor, it doesn't get any better than that. And I still teach full time. I have my engineering classes, the Entrepreneurship 550, where I teach the leadership and this quadrant and all that, quadrant 4 model and all that. And then I'm teaching a new class in the fall with psych because they wanted me to keep teaching for them. They gave me an opportunity to create a new course. So it's going to be in educational technology. So what's next is I'm going to keep teaching with the university because honestly, I just love teaching Michigan students. Like I get up every morning and I get to go in and teach these classes and I get to help people live a better version of their life. And that just means everything to me. I've always been, even in the military, I was that guy who was like, hey, I just had this experience. The people right behind me are about to go up that same ladder. Let me reach back and tell them, hey, third rung, really loose, right? Get to the middle and then just start using just your arms. It's much quicker. And like that makes... Right, I share that information, and all of them have a better time, and that's always been a big thing for me. And so, being able to do that with students is amazing, right? In the 550 class that I teach, ENTR 550 up in engineering, I mean, consistently the students are like, "This is the most amazing thing I've ever experienced." It's not like any other entrepreneurship class, or not any other engineering class. I'm like, well, yeah, because you're being taught by a psychologist who's hiding in the engineering college, but sure. So what's next is more of that, basically, and then. The students in 223, years ago, they started a student club, an actual student organization, just to support the class, which, again, is just part of the weirdness of the course. And they wanted to continue. So they said, Dr. Fretz, you got to stay with us, and we're going to keep doing this, and you're going to teach stuff, and we're going to make this kind of almost like a baby incubator. And I thought, that's really interesting. We could create something where this ECC club becomes a place where you go where you're entrepreneurship curious, right? You're a novice at the level that the students in the class were, but now it's because you're there because you want to be. And we have a whole year to work with you. I'm like, this could work really well, and I'm working on getting some funding and whatnot. So, I told the students, I said, listen, I'm not going to do this for you, but I'll do it with you. And so as long as you guys stay fully involved and we can get some more people involved, this could be an amazing experience where we become in some ways, not akin, but like the maximize, right? You like this is a thing that needs to be right in this space, right? And we'll see how it goes. And I'm doing it a little different because I told the students that this always has to be a student group that you're running. This can't be like a Fretz cult, right? It's got to be like, hey, Fretz helps you do this thing you want to do. So we'll see. We're gonna have a little retreat here in the summer, and my funding sources are seem pretty firm. And so I have no idea where it's going to go. But I think the spirit of 223 might live on. We'll see. And then I am just going to sort of slowly wind down. So I have told the university that in 2027, I will not teach full time. I will teach just in the fall, which is fine because I'm not the core of the minor anymore. So there's no guilt there. For me to take a term off back in the day because I was the one required. I was the core course for the minor. So that course was the limiting factor, right? So now that's not a problem anymore. So if I take a winter term off, so winter 2027, I'll be in Disney World probably, and so there'll be a little bit of a change, right? Because as we mentioned earlier, I've had some serious health issues, and I've been very lucky. No one, including the top cardiologist at U of M, understands why I'm doing as well as I am, but I get some bonus time here, and not many people have a Widowmaker heart attack, refuse to go to the hospital, and are still alive several years later. That's very, very unusual. It's that someone that stupid gets to be alive years later is pretty cool. And I'm just trying to make good use of my time. Yeah.
Well, it's a blessing you're still here, and I'm really grateful for you coming on to the podcast.
Happy to do it, yeah.
You've been instrumental in helping me. You actually made me feel confident in my decision to be a psych major, which is
awesome.
I don't know if I've ever told you that before.
I love it.
I believe that I've been able to use a lot of your lessons well. And, you've also done awesome things for me. When I hosted the Michigan Entrepreneur Summit in 2021, we had that was during the pandemic, right? Where like people weren't allowed to be in person, right? We had a little celebration at your house. I had some custom cakes made. We had Michael Sakan from Our Future. By the way, he ended up selling that to Morning Brew for a bunch of money. So nice. I don't know if you knew that. But he exited that business, and so we had a little group together at your house for celebration. You're known for doing that, bringing students to, the most epic class project, go on a little boat cruise with you.
The students love it. The administration, not so much. And I'm like, listen, man, have you been to my backyard? My backyard's awesome. You got to come check it out.
Well, and then last summer, right, we launched our Detroit Hacker House and in-person Catalyst program, which you've been a guest lecturer at now.
Happy to do it.
And we were able to come to your house for our kickoff. You gave some epic words of encouragement, and then we actually got your slide going. So we were able to actually go down the slide and sling ourselves out into the Huron River at 30 miles per hour or something like that.
This is the, until now, somewhat unknown Washtenaw County's water slide, but it's very well hidden.
Well, don't know if I was supposed to say that.
No, it's fine. But it's another example of kind of how I do things, right? It's like, somebody's like, how do you do that? You just put it in and then you shoot down into the water. And they're like, okay. So,
do we need to cut that?
No, it's fine.
Well, anyway, I have some recordings, but those will stay private for a while. But but it's been awesome just over the years getting to know you and just seeing just how your influence has impacted so many founders and
that's awesome.
And also so many veterans too, and people in the service. So we thank you for your service. We thank you for just all the lessons you learned. We hope for many more years of that as well.
I'll keep going as long as I can.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, let's go ahead and end the show there. But thank you so much, Dr. Fretz. Appreciate having you.
My pleasure. Anytime.